Anybody have any Polish blood in them? Will you raise your hand? Anybody Polish? Oh, wow. Quite a bit. All right. Fantastic. So, a special day for you in a way, as it is for the whole church, but I think it may be a special way for those who have some Polish blood. One, it's Divine Mercy Sunday. In Divine Mercy Sunday, Divine Mercy, the devotion began really in Poland through this sister nun, Sister Faustina. In Poland, it was Pope John Paul who spread the devotion, and that's the image in the revelations you have from God, who spoke about his love and mercy for people. So that's sort of an honor for it to be Polish. But also, of course, today, Pope John Paul II is canonized again for the whole church. But I think those who have perhaps Polish blood feel a little more sense of pride. Remember when he first became Pope? My sister was telling me in New York, the first thing that would come on people's lips when he announced that he was Pope was, "No more Polish jokes." I think it did help. I think it sort of elevated, wow, one of their very, very own. And I remember visiting my sister. She lived for a while, Greenpoint, Brooklyn, with a very Polish neighborhood. And even in the bars, I've seen pictures of not that I was in the bar, on the outside, by the way, pictures of the Pope. I mean, what do you see pictures of a Pope in a bar, but their pride and great esteem for this great man and for our church. And so today we have Pope John the 23rd, an Italian, and Pope John Paul II, a Pole canonized. So today, I think in Rome, they're serving not spaghetti and meatballs, but spaghetti and kielbasa, I think, together. How's that? All right? So great day. Anyway, Brother John, when I was back in college, he was some years ahead of me, was always late. Late for meals, late for class, and most blatantly and most annoyingly late for morning prayer. So there in the seminary at 6:30 every morning, we began with morning prayer, and then we had 30 minutes of meditation, where we'll all be seated and church be still and quiet as people sort of got into their prayer. And sure enough, just when things were all quiet and things would settle down, who would come barging in through the door? Brother John. Running, trampling in, and unlike here, if you come late, you could go in the back, but back then, you had assigned seats, because the superiors sat in the back, and they had your assigned seats, so if you were missing, they knew who was missing. And sure enough, he would come, and of course, he would have to be sitting in the middle of the pew, and you know how fun that is, people climbing over you to get into your pew. That was so annoying. Sometimes he'd come down, he wasn't even dressed, he would still have his pajamas on. Not that he wore them, but we had these cassocks. The black cassocks. So he'd just throw that over his pajamas, and there he was. God was always late. I guess there's some people that's who they are in superiors. As much as they try to, speak to him about it, correct him about it. John was late, and, well, what are you going to do? But what made matters worse was after college, we had 2 years of teaching. And he was teaching in New Rochelle, New York, Salesian High School, all-boys school. I guess it's the same way, right, with class. Isn't there a first bell and then the second bell? First bell means you better be in class. Second bell means, okay, class begins. If you're late after the second bell, then you're in trouble. But anyway, he would stand there when the first bell would ring right by the door. He would have it open. He was like a cop just standing there waiting for the kids to come in. And the first bell would ring and kids would come scurrying in. And then the second bell would ring, and once that bell rang, he would close the door, and that was it. If you came late, you had to go downstairs to the office, get a late pass, and with that, probably detention. You say, well, fair is fair, but the guy was too much. He was so legalistic. There'd be kids who were just like 2 steps away. Just 2 steps away. Sorry, the bell rang, that's it. Some kids would be running down the hall, trying their best to get there. The bell rang, that's it. Some kids were on their way to get there on time, would drop their books, and picking their books up, they came late. Not by a lot, by a few seconds. No. Go down to the office and get detention. I couldn't understand that. How could someone who was always late be this harsh, so rigid? It makes no sense. See, Divine Mercy Sunday, there's 2 aspects to Divine Mercy. One, that we want God to be merciful to us. But on the other hand, we're expected to be merciful to others. Especially those who are forgiven much should be more merciful. And somehow Brother John didn't quite get that. And maybe in your mind, maybe you pictured Jesus or God to be like Brother John, that there Jesus or God is at the gate of heaven, and you come, if you're late or you weren't perfect, I'm sorry, the door's closed, you go downstairs. It's a detention of eternity, but anyway, you're down there for good. And that's what we thought maybe God was like. No matter how hard you try, maybe you stumble and you fall, but please, Lord, I'm sorry. You sinned, that's it. The door is closed. And so Sister Faustina, we believe, had these revelations. Because a lot of people are living under this fear of God. Right? And some of us may have been brought up that same way. That you don't mess with God because He's tough. He says, no. I'm a God of mercy, and the heart from His rays. The red meaning His blood, the water from His side, that God is merciful. Come on, let's face it. We all messed up, okay? All of us. And probably in some situations gravely. We all have sinned. In fact, why don't we right now turn to your neighbor and tell them the worst sin you ever commit? No, never mind. We won't do that. No, maybe not. Maybe not. You were getting nervous. Whoa, huh? Yowza, huh? Exactly. Exactly what I'm saying. We all, and we want no one to know that, right? But there's a grace. There can be a grace, let's say, in messing up, either in the sins or just life itself. How often, sometimes in confession or sometimes even in the office, people come to see me and they're carrying this hurt, pain, and what they did, where they messed up. And they messed up. It not only has affected them, but maybe some others in their family and the consequences. And though they may have been forgiven, they still live with that regret, I wish I could have a do-over. I wouldn't have done that. Wish I could change things. That feeling. You sure have that feeling, probably. What did I do that? You can kick yourself. Still today, you still feel it. And so listening to them, I don't tell them, oh, don't worry about it. It's nothing. I don't try to gloss over it. Because it is something. Oh, it is something. But you have to recognize you're right, you can't change it. But what you can do is this, you can let it shape and form you. Which means this, that because you knew what it is to fail, what it is perhaps to sin gravely perhaps, then how can you look on someone else in judgment and condemnation? First recognize, I messed up, therefore I cannot judge somebody. I would have to be merciful to them. Because I know I need mercy as well. And that's the grace. That's the grace in being merciful to others. It's great to have failure. And sometimes I worry about sometimes children with parents who want to protect their children, who want their life to be smooth. They don't want to give any failing grades, they always succeed. And there's a danger. Sometimes I worry about kids who get straight A's all the time. Those kids, straight A's, they don't have to study, straight A's. Some of them are good athletes too, to boot. Wow, And they get the girl their choice, if they're the boys, right? They get into college they want. The whole life is nice. But then what happens when they do meet failure or heartache? How are they going to handle it? Or how are they going to understand someone else who may not be successful? You have to know failure to understand failure. It's a grace. Because once you realize your weakness, you can be compassionate. Way back in my early priesthood, I was teaching at a high school. I taught English, I think Spanish and religion. It was fine. But on the staff was Father Tony, and he was in charge of the finances, and he was in his 70s, and he taught one math class, one period of math. It was slow math, algebra 1 in 2 years, and he had the kids who struggled with math. Anyway, he was in his 70s. He told the director, I can't do it anymore. The kids are getting on my nerves. I don't have the patience. I really need to stop teaching. So they told me, guess what? You'll take his class. You'll teach his classes. What? I can't teach math. I was terrible in algebra. I almost failed. I just passed by the skin of my teeth when I was in high school. I can't do math. People like, who struggle with math? Raise your hand. Those, you know what it's like. Yeah, you just can't. I said, I can't do it. He said, don't worry about it. You're forgetting the most important thing. I said, what's that? Your book has the answers. Oh, that's right. My book did have the answers. I said, okay, fine. But every now and then, there had to be that kid in the class who raised their hand. How did you get that answer? Oh, so I go to the board, okay, and I start working out the problem. And as I'm getting closer to the end, I'm realizing you're not going to come to that answer. And I knew it. I said, oops. So I quickly erased the board. I said, listen, we can't spend too much time on this. We got to get ahead. See me after class and I'll show you. We had 2 doors. I ducked out real quick. And then at night, I would see my, we lived in a community and someone would tell me, hey, how'd you get this answer? And they would show me, I go back and, by the way, and I work it out and got it done. You know something? Of all the classes I ever taught, that was the best class I ever taught was math. I was a good teacher because I knew what it was like to struggle in math. I knew what it was like not to do well in math and not to get it, not to understand. I can commiserate with them. And that's the best class I taught. Because I knew their struggle, I knew their pain. And that's what it is when we fail, when we struggle. I don't judge, I don't condemn because I know what it's like. I too have failed. And I can be merciful to you because I know I need mercy. My first assignment after ordination was just for the summer, just 2 months. I was ordained at the end of May and right there for end of June and July and August. I couldn't quite figure out. They sent me to this little parish in Birmingham, Alabama. I don't know if you know this or not, but there aren't many Catholics in Birmingham, Alabama. Okay? Especially 31 years ago, there was even less Catholics. I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing in Birmingham, Alabama? I'm just out of the cinema. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to make a name for myself. Let's get this started. I'm rearing to go. Birmingham, Alabama, this little parish, Our Lady of the Rosary. And so I told myself, don't worry about it. Just for the summer, 2 months. You're moving on. So just, go through it. So in my mind, I thought that this would be the least significant assignment. But it turned out to be perhaps one of the most significant assignments for me. For I was with this pastor, Father Patrick Corcoran. He wasn't from Ireland. He was from the Bronx. I don't know how he ended in Birmingham, Alabama either. He was there for years. It never dawned on me, but then I realized later on why he was in that little parish, Lady of the Rosary. Because he messed up. In a sense, he was a failure. He wasn't a very good administrator. They didn't know what to do with him. We'll send him down to Birmingham, Alabama. You can't do much harm there. There aren't many Catholics. We can't send any of our big fellas to that little place. We'll send Father Patrick. Small little church, not many Catholics. He was a recovering alcoholic and he struggled with that. And I guess, I don't know his whole history, but you hear people talk and it recurred and recurred, and it was sort of embarrassing, I guess. And so he was since, quote, the failure. But with him, I learned a lot. He was the most tender-hearted, compassionate person I ever met. For their little parish, we lived by the projects in a very impoverished area. And people would come any time of day or night. He wasn't all that organized, God bless him, but he had a heart of mercy and of tenderness. Because I think because he wasn't this success. He knew failure, he knew disappointment. And so he had this heart of mercy for those who came. And as I said, I thought it would be the least significant assignment. In many words, my first assignment, my first pastor, was the most significant. His tenderness, his compassion, and his mercy. As I said, today we're celebrating these, also recognizing the canonization of the two Holy Fathers, Pope John Paul II and Pope John the 23rd. Both have given sort of, I know you call it nicknames or titles. Pope John Paul is called Pope John Paul the Great. Fittingly so, a great man. Almost brought down communism. Fantastic, right? No other great works. And Pope John the 23rd, that short, roly-poly Pope, they call him Good Pope John. That's his title. Good Pope John. And I want to ask you yourself, at your death, what would you want them to write about you in your obituary or your eulogy or scratched on your tombstone? That you were great? Or that you were good? Kind and tender-hearted? Which would you choose? Now, both of them were both. I'm not saying one was the other, please. Both Pope were good and great, but it's just the title. In the world's eye, we sort of want to be great, don't we? But when you come down to it, it's good, isn't it? That you were a good person, that you were caring, and that you were compassionate. Actually, we can be both great and good if we're merciful. That we receive God's mercy to us, and we in turn, who know our own failures, can be merciful and tender to others.